Autumn 1867, Wyoming Territory. The wind ripped across the open plains like a scream held too long in a hollow chest. A wagon lay on its side. Wood splintered, canvas torn, wheels twisted like snapped bones. Smoke curled into the pale sky, thick with ash and dread. Blood smeared across the ground, soaking into dry earth that had seen too much of it. A girl stood barefoot in the wreckage, no more than 10, her dress clinging to her thin frame, soaked through with rain and soot. Her arms cradled a swaddled baby, silent but for the occasional whimper. Her dark eyes stared ahead, not at the fire, not at the twisted iron wheel beside her, but at the still body of the woman who once sang her lullabies. Her little sister, barely 8, huddled near the wagon axle, arms around her knees, eyes, red but dry. No one was crying anymore. They were beyond tears. There were no words, only wind and ruin. They had no name, only silence, cold, and each other. By the time the fire died and the last ember cracked, they had already started walking. Toward where? They didn't know. Just away. Away from the smoke. Away from the stillness. They wandered, hands clasped, feet blistered. The older girl carried her baby brother on her back, held up by a fraying shawl that once belonged to their mother. They slept beneath trees, beneath stars, beneath suspicion. They followed dirt roads to small towns with wooden signs and watching eyes. In one town, the church bell rang noon as they stepped into the orphanage yard. A gray-haired woman with tight lips and calloused hands looked them over. No names, no parents, no papers. Too many mouths, the woman muttered. Too little bread. You'll find no charity here. They were sent away. Not even given a crust, just numbers. The girl was 3. Her sister 4. The baby 6. They didn't ask what happened to 1, 2, or 5. Another town. Another door slammed. Only the stories their mother once whispered kept them walking. Stories of a town by the river, where men traded horses and women wore blue calico dresses. A place where a man, a tracker, she said, once promised to return for them. She never gave his name, just said, "He'll know who you are." But they didn't know who they were anymore. The girl remembered her father's hands, strong, dark-skinned, stained with mud and ash. She remembered how he carried her on his shoulders while birds wheeled overhead, how he spoke in low tones to her mother when the nights got cold. But more than anything, she remembered the fear in his eyes the night the riders came. It was a bitter winter, the cabin deep in the woods, smoke rising soft and slow into a sky heavy with snow. Her father had heard the rumors, men in town accusing him of guiding Cheyenne scouts through Union patrols, of harboring savages. Her mother begged him to leave, but he wouldn't. The night they came, it wasn't with law or warning. It was with fire and gunpowder. The girl had woken to shouting, horses, screams. She and her siblings were shoved into the crawl space beneath the floorboards. Her mother kissed her forehead and whispered, "Don't come out no matter what." Her last words, "Protect them. Never forget." Then the flames came, and the screams were swallowed. When morning broke, all that remained was scorched wood, and snow turned black with ash. They walked for days after that, stealing apples from barrels, drinking from streams, trading silence for pity, but pity ran dry quicker than water. In one mining camp, the girl offered a few berries for a scrap of bread. A man threw a stone at her and called her mongrel. Her sister's shoes tore apart. Her baby brother grew feverish. He stopped, crying so much. That scared her more than his wails. So she stole. A loaf from a windowsill. A coat from a drunken trader's cart. She grew nimble, cold. Her heart, once soft with lullabies, became tight as a clenched fist. They slept in a barn once, hidden behind hay bales. She dreamed of her mother's voice again, dreamed of laughter, of soft hands. She woke to a shout and the sharp end of a pitchfork at her neck. They ran. Again. They always ran. Until running became breathing. Until fear became second nature. There was no name to cry out when she scraped her knee or when the baby wheezed through the night. No name for the ledger or the census man or the preacher's list. No name when she stood behind a saloon, begging a woman with tired eyes for a crust of cornbread. They were no one. A name is a promise, a legacy, something that ties you to this world even when the wind tries to erase you. They had none, not until the day the storm rolled in. The wind didn't let up for 3 days. It tore across the hills like a living beast, hurling dirt and branches and sheets of rain against the world with a fury that felt personal. The children had no destination, just instinct. They kept moving, stumbling across gulches and brambles, shivering beneath the open sky. By the time the first crack of thunder shattered the evening, the girl had already spotted the black clouds rolling in like stampeding buffalo. She gripped her baby brother tighter and grabbed her sister's hand. "This way," she whispered, though she didn't know if it was the right way, just the way her feet carried her. They scrambled down a slope where an uprooted tree lay like a fallen sentinel. Beneath its torn roots there was just enough space to crawl under, enough to shield them from the worst of the downpour. Rain pelted them like stones. Thunder cracked like the gunfire she remembered from that night, echoing deep and close. Lightning tore the sky in two, striking a pine not 20 yards away. The flash turned night into day for a breathless moment. Then came the sound, like the world splitting open. The baby had stopped crying. His skin burned. His breath came in shallow, fluttering pulls. The girl held him tighter, praying he'd cry again. Later, when the storm had quieted to a whisper, she stepped outside to find dry wood. The forest was soaked and heavy with mist. Her fingers bled from clutching thorny vines. But she needed a fire, anything warm. That's when she heard the growl. Low, guttural, too close. 3 wolves emerged from the brush, silent as ghosts. Lean, starving, drawn by the scent of fever and weakness. The largest, a gray with yellow eyes, stepped forward. She grabbed the nearest branch, splintered, but sharp. "Stay back," she warned, her voice shaking. Her sister whimpered behind her. The lead wolf bared its teeth, snarled, then it lunged. A crack split the night. The wolf dropped mid-leap, a red mist blooming from its flank. Another shot rang out and the second wolf yelped, vanished into the dark. The third fled without looking back. The forest went still. She turned, eyes wide, heart hammering. A man stood there in the mist, tall, weather-beaten, rain dripping from the brim of a wide hat. A rifle hung loose in one calloused hand. He stepped forward, slow and sure, boots squelching in the wet grass. He pointed his chin toward the bundle in her arms. "That your brother?" he asked. His voice was gravel, quiet, but firm. She nodded once. He looked toward the fallen wolf, then back at her. "Bring him," he said. "Y'all'll freeze out here." She didn't move at first, neither did her sister. The man just turned his horse and began to walk. No explanations, no questions. She hesitated only a second, then followed. The trail was narrow, half hidden beneath brush. They climbed into the saddle behind him, the baby between them, feverish and limp. The horse moved steady and strong, hooves sloshing through mud and moss. By the time they saw the light from his cabin windows, the sky was clearing. It wasn't much, just a low wooden house tucked into the tree line, with smoke curling from a crooked chimney. A small barn, fenced-in pasture, but to the girl it looked like a fortress. He didn't speak as he opened the door, just motioned them inside. The warmth hit like a wall, fire crackling in the hearth, the scent of stew thick in the air. Still, she stayed close to the door, holding her siblings like a shield, watching. He placed blankets by the fire, set a kettle on the stove, sliced bread, left it untouched on a plate. Her sister inched toward the warmth. She giggled, really giggled, when her feet touched the rug. The baby stirred, then drank greedily from the tin cup of milk the man left on the floor. The girl didn't eat. She didn't speak. She didn't sit. The man didn't force her. He simply sat in a worn chair, whittling a piece of pine, quiet as dusk. The only sound was the occasional creak of the rocking chair he fixed near the window. Later that night, when her siblings were finally asleep, she sat on the floor, eyes on him like a hawk. He didn't look up. "You afraid I'm the wolf?" he asked. She said nothing. He nodded to himself and went back to his work. For the first time in a long time, no one asked her name. The days stretched slow after that. The fever broke. The baby slept longer. Her sister followed a barn cat around the house like a shadow. The girl stayed quiet, but she watched. Always watched. She noticed how he left his boots by the door, polished, neatly placed. She noticed how he never raised his voice, never locked the door, how he left a locket on the mantel, always closed. She didn't open it, not yet. But she thought about what might be inside. A face, a past, a name. The first trouble came with the thaw. Word had a way of traveling faster than reason out in the territories, and soon, whispers crept like snakes through the dry grass. Old hawks feeding savages brats. It started with stares in town. Then came the riders, 3 of them, men in long coats, dust-caked and sour-eyed. They came up the ridge one afternoon, spitting chaw and contempt into the dirt. One held a rusted carbine, slung too loose. Another had the scars of someone who liked giving pain more than taking it. Hawk stood at the fence line, arms crossed, calm as ever. "You gone soft, Hawk?" one sneered. "Heard you took in some half-blood strays." "They're kids," Hawk said simply, "not soldiers." "You know what that makes you?" the second one spat. "A traitor, same as your red-skinned wife." Hawk didn't flinch, didn't blink, but something behind his eyes darkened, like coals burning low. Inside, the girl watched from the window. Her little sister huddled behind her legs. She gripped the kitchen knife so hard her knuckles whitened. Her heart thudded like hooves in her chest. The men didn't ride off right away. They lingered, tested boundaries. One spat at Hawk's boots before turning away. The last one glanced toward the house. Their gaze met the girl's through the glass, cold, cutting. Then they were gone, but not forgotten. That night the wind carried no howls, but the silence felt sharp, untrusting. Later, Hawk found her sitting, on the back steps holding a singed book. "Mama taught us," she murmured when he sat beside her. Her thumb brushed over blackened corners of paper, words half gone. He nodded once, then looked out toward the hills, as if seeing something long buried. "My wife was Cheyenne," he said after a while, voice low, unforced. "Sweet as spring. Bloom. We married quiet. Hid up north. Thought maybe we could outlive the hate." He didn't finish. The pause said it all. "She died at Sand Creek," he added. "I was away. Never got to say goodbye." He pulled the locket from his pocket, not the mantle this time. Opened it. Showed her a tiny faded portrait. Dark hair, soft eyes. "I ain't got children," he whispered. "But I ain't letting ghosts starve." No more words. Just the crackle of fire and the rhythm of the wind in the trees. That night the girl couldn't sleep. She lay curled beside her siblings, staring at the rafters above. Her mind spun with memories. The way Mama sewed, fingers nimble and sure. How she'd hum as she worked. "A star," her mother once said, stitching a little cloth square. "So you'll always find your way." The girl slipped outside while the house slept. She took that cloth from her pocket, threadbare, clutched too many times through fear and cold, and she burned it, letting the flame eat it slow, watching ash curl skyward. A goodbye not to Mama, but to the belief she'd ever return, and somehow that hurt even more. In the days that followed, something shifted. Hawk handed her the reins one morning without a word. She climbed into the saddle awkwardly, then again, smoother the next day. She taught him the baby's sounds, what each coo meant, what each cry called for. He learned fast, didn't say much, but remembered everything. He carved a wooden horse, small, smooth, painted with coal and pine pitch. Placed it in the cradle one morning without explanation. Her sister found it and clutched it like treasure. The girl didn't say thank you, but she helped mend his fence that day without being asked. They didn't talk about family, but they acted like one. Then one morning, clear skies, cool wind, Hawk rode to town for supplies. He didn't come back. Not by dusk. Not by midnight. The girl stared into the dark from the porch, hands gripping the rifle Hawk once showed her how to load. Her heart beat fast, but her breath was slow. In the mud near the barn, just one boot print. Deep. Heavy. Not Hawk's. She stepped back inside and bolted the door. Her eyes didn't leave the window all night. The horse came back alone. Its flank was scraped, saddle askew, reins trailing in the dust. No Hawk. The girl stood barefoot in the yard, the cold morning dew biting her toes. She ran her hand along the horse's neck, damp with sweat. Her eyes scanned the horizon, heart pounding. The baby cried inside. Her sister whimpered in sleep. She saddled the mare with trembling fingers. The rifle Hawk had taught her to clean. She loaded it silently, one bullet at a time. "If I die," she whispered, "they'll have no one." The sun was just dipping behind the hills as she rode into the dark. She found them near Bitterroot Glen, an old camp of rotted tree stumps and rusted gear from Hawk's army days. 3 men, drunk and loud, circled a figure tied to a pine trunk. Blood streaked Hawk's temple. One eye swollen shut. The leader barked, "Sign over the land, old man. We leave you breathing." Hawk spat blood. "I'd rather choke on dirt." The girl lay belly down in the grass, watching from the ridge above. Her breath slowed. Her finger tightened on the trigger. She picked up a stone and hurled it toward the far end of the camp. It clattered loudly. One man turned. Confused, she fired. The bullet slammed into his leg. He dropped, howling. In the same instant, Hawk surged up, snapping the weakened rope with a roar. He tackled the nearest man, fists like hammers. Gunfire erupted. She scrambled downhill as bark exploded beside her face. Smoke coiled. One man fired wildly into the woods. Another lunged toward Hawk with a knife. She fired again. He fell. Chaos. Screams. Then, silence. Breathing hard, she stumbled to Hawk's side. His shirt was soaked in blood, but he gripped her shoulder. "You came," he gasped. She hooked his arm over her shoulders, dragging him back into the trees. Step by step, gritting her teeth. No time for pain. No time for fear. By the time they reached the ranch, dawn painted the sky in pink and rust. The fire inside was low. The baby cried. Hawk collapsed onto the floor, barely conscious. The girl wordlessly fetched cloth and water. She wrapped his shoulder with practiced hands. He grunted. "That boy's got lungs." She didn't reply, but she didn't let go of his hand. Weeks passed. Hawk recovered slower than he liked. The girl, Mary now, though she hadn't said it aloud yet, kept the ranch running. Her sister helped collect eggs. The baby laughed again. One warm afternoon, Hawk walked them into town. The clerk, spectacled and stiff, peered at the papers. "Children's names?" Hawk rested a hand on her shoulder. "Mary," he said, voice steady. "William and June Hawk." She turned, eyes wide. A single breath hitched in her throat. Her lips trembled. Then she nodded. "Hawk," she repeated. "We're Hawks." Years passed. The hill above the ranch bore a single wooden cross. Simple, carved by careful hands. James Hawk. 1823, 1876, Mary. Stood before it, not crying, just still. A quiet smile in her eyes. At her side, children waited, books in hand. She turned toward them, opening the same burned volume her mother had taught her from. She taught them letters, stories, names, voiceover. He gave us more than a name. He gave us a place to belong. Cut to black. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment below. What does a name mean to you?